we're talking about these sort of issues, or I guess we're describing them as boxes to check. That if you're planning on retiring early, there are 5, probably more than that, but we've got 5 that are very specific boxes that you need to check now to make sure that you're going to be on track for retiring early. As we mentioned earlier in the program, had this conversation with a couple of different folks this past week. One couple, age 59 and 60, looking to retire at 62. Another couple in their mid-50s looking to retire at 60. So that would sort of be your classic definition of retiring early, right? You're planning on retiring early before age 65. So that presents sort of a unique set of circumstances that you really need to kind of work through. And so that's the purpose of this segment, is to kind of help you think about and work through what those issues might be. Because last thing you want to do is give notice, right? Only to find yourself unprepared to succeed in retirement once that final paycheck comes in. That would be the very definition of a problem, because once you leave your job, it's oftentimes hard to come back, and even harder to find a similar job that pays as much as you may have been making. So you don't want to do that. And certainly that's why, speaking of those conversations we have at the office on a regular basis, we typically do those in a series of conversations, not like one conversation and poof, you're retired. It's usually 2, 3, 4 sometimes over the course of time to really make sure that you're on the right track for retirement. And so that is, of course, the primary role that we serve at Nelson Financial Planning, is helping to kind of work through with people these types of issues. So we're going to share on the program the 5 things, or the 5 boxes that you want to make sure gets checked if you're thinking about retiring early. First and foremost on the list, no surprise, we talk about this a lot on the program, is that you've got to have an understanding and an accounting for what are going to be your health care costs. That doesn't just mean the health insurance, because according to the most recent survey, the average 65-year-old is going to need about $165,000 of after-tax assets. So that's, net, not gross, in savings in order to cover their various healthcare expenses through retirement. So if it's a couple, well, you've got to double that number. So that would be $330,000 of after-tax money to be able to cover that. Healthcare, folks, is perhaps one of the single biggest retirement gap issues that we see for a lot of retirees. And if you're trying to retire early, it's particularly an issue, right? Because you don't get Medicare until age 65. And then, even then, Medicare isn't exactly free. That was one of the parts of the conversation that we had with one of the couples this past week. They're like, I thought Medicare was going to solve all of my problems and not have to worry about cost anymore. And yeah, it doesn't work that way. As if you got Medicare Part B, and then you got a supplement, and then you throw in D, it can easily run $800 a month for an individual. So even then, you're figuring, maybe $1,600 or $1,500 a month on just that expense. And then that doesn't cover all the other health-related expenses like dental and vision and things like that. And of course, if you're trying to use COBRA, that only lasts for 18 months, right? And then you have to pay the full premium of that without any kind of employer subsidy. Of course, you've got the marketplace, but the tricky part there is always with the marketplace. We run into this all the time. When you're getting that monthly cost off of the marketplace, off of the exchange, off of Obamacare, whatever you want to call it, that is in fact an advanced tax credit. So all might seem lovely, and you're not having to pay as much on your health insurance as you might think, until you get to April 15th, and then you actually file your tax return, and then you actually report all of your income, and then that number of income then determines whether you get to keep the tax credit that was advanced to you along the way, or you have to repay it Sometimes you may find out that you are eligible for more, but more often than not, it's people having to pay it. So just be aware of that and how big of an issue that healthcare is. So if you plan on retiring early, the focus really starts with, okay, how do I tackle these healthcare costs? Second is now you're to really start to look more at the finances and kind of what the cash flow, what the income is going to look like, what the expenses are going to look like. I mean, obviously that gets us into the conversation about budgeting, looking at money in, money out. But also you have to take a look at the underlying investment allocation as well, right? If you're really that shift when you retire is a shift from kind of the accumulation phase to the spending phase, from the growth phase to maybe kind of more the income phase. And that really does require you to think about your investment allocation a little bit differently. Hopefully you've been doing that along the way as you're kind of getting closer to retirement, so it's not some, complete pivot, if you will, in terms of your investment allocation. And then lastly, you've got to make sure that as you're taking that income out, that you are ultimately creating the most tax efficient retirement that you can. And of course, that last part is of course where the tax team at Nelson Financial Planning, folks like Kristen Costello, who joined us last week, Christina Lamb, as well as many others that are a part of the tax team, that's where that really comes into play, where we're actually running an actual tax return, not just kind of making up some numbers and, it's probably this. We're running an actual tax return when we do those tax projections to really make sure that you've got the most tax efficient retirement income strategy as you possibly can, because let's face it, you're only spending what you're getting to keep after the IRS takes its cut. So make sure you're kind of really thinking through that one in terms of where that cash flow is coming from, and to maximize out the tax efficiency, if you will, on that. I think we're up to number 3. Well, if you're planning on retiring early, you probably want to be maxing out your retirement contributions, particularly in those last few years of working. You really want to try and maximize those out. One of those couples we talked to just this past week really kind of devising a specific strategy that we were advocating to really maximize it out. And here's the thing, those maximum contribution levels have in fact gone up, and there's even a new one now for this year. So if you're over age 50, there's the ability to do a catch-up contribution into your employer plan, like a 401k, a 403b, or even a deferred comp 457, where you can contribute an extra $7,500 if you're over age 50. But there's also a new one that if you're 60 to 63, you can actually do 150% of that catch-up amount, allowing you to go all the way up to an extra $11,250. So that's a pretty nice additional contribution that's available to you that to really bulk up those savings in the last few years of work. And certainly that makes a lot of sense. Next up on our list of sort of boxes to check if you're planning to retire early, you've got to kind of spend some time figuring out this Social Security stuff. And obviously that's where, thinking of the office again, that's where Rob Field, who's our National Social Security Advisor, comes in and really helps to give folks a perspective on that Social Security. We're going to slide to the break, and when we come back, I want to kind of continue this conversation about these last couple boxes that you need to check, Social Security, and then there's one more to give you a little bit more strategy on trying to figure out how to retire early. Coming up next here on Dollars and Cents with Joel Garris of Nelson Financial Planning.